Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today we would talk about some of the additions to AirRB this update. Obviously we got the addition of Israel, which I've been playing through, and generally the vehicles have been alright. Then also we have some other things which are added, a few top tier jets like the F4J, the Thunder Chief as well, which is incredibly strong right now. And I thought that we would also talk about AirRB EC. Basically what they've done is they've taken some simulator maps, or enduring confrontation maps as they're known, and they've added them to the AirRB matchmaker. And generally, I would actually say this is a positive thing. For me personally, having engagement ranges which are longer and different angles to be able to engage from and different objectives to engage at, I think is overall positive when it comes to top tier. The only real issue that I'm seeing with this stuff is it isn't just at top tier where these maps are coming out. The lowest I've actually seen them is at 7.0 when I was in a 7.0 to 8.0 match with the Oregon. So that was a little bit worrying. But the fact that at top tier at least, you have multiple objectives that you can go after, the fact that there's the scout plane, the bombers, there's also the attackers, means that there are different points that can be engaged upon when it comes to attacking the enemy. And it also means that it gives people different setup points to be able to engage from as well. One thing I would note about some of the objectives though, at least on the Afghanistan map, I've found that when the attackers spawn in, the A4s, sometimes they just spawn behind a mountain and run into it. So that might need a little bit of moving around, but generally, the objectives themselves work pretty well. And I feel like you still will have that central point though. The thing about AirRB is generally what happens is you can have as expansive map as you want, but depending on where the AI are, generally that's where, things are fought over. Luckily, the AI is a bit more spread on EC, but the area where it isn't spread is where the convoys are and also where the central battle is. So I feel generally people are going to eventually navigate to those areas, or they're going to navigate to the bombers because they're the easiest targets to hit when it comes to the AI. So that's where fights are going to happen more with them. But with the extended ranges and with the longer areas, it means that you can finally use your radars, finally use your semi-active radar homing missiles in a more realistic way and in a more, length way. Generally, when I've used stuff like Sparrows, which I used a decent amount on the F4C, the only time I really use them is if somebody was doing a high loop or if somebody was climbing without really, noticing anything and just going to the heavens. These were ways of, or these were playstyles which could be punished by the Sparrow, whereas with the objectives and also size of the maps in these RBEC modes, you can actually just fight normally with them from extended ranges. Now, this is good because it means that you can utilize more of your mechanics. It means that you can, your actual skill level can make a bit more of a difference when it comes to the game. But also, it has a bit of an issue. And this is the problem which I've talked about a lot when it comes to these large tier maps at top tier. The problem that you have with them is if you try and expand on the idea of those mechanics, like the missiles themselves, and also the countermeasures, and also the RWR, which is involved in all that system, what you invariably do is you make stock vehicles even more weaker than what they were before. Because it basically becomes more of a game of haves and have-nots in that regard. If you don't have the long-range missiles, or if you don't have the all-aspect missiles, or if you don't have countermeasures, then you're going to have a really rough time when it comes to the higher tiers of the game. And as you go up, it gets worse. It's already pretty bad right now on the smaller maps, but at the same time, because the matches are so closed in, it means that you can have an opportunity to use your gun or maybe the bad missiles that you're given at the higher tiers. Whereas on these expansive maps, you basically have to hope that you can pick an AI target to go farm, for, 5 or 10 minutes and hoping that nobody either goes there to get it first with their missiles or that the enemy decides to not turn up. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you get a lucky radar spot, and that's about it, especially if you beeline to it. So that's a bit of a problem with these maps, but I think that can be solved with just having more objectives. So instead of just having one focal point of attack when it comes to the AI fighting each other, maybe you could have 3. Then you could diminish the amount of points each one is concerned with. Then also, instead of just having 1 bomber flight, you could have 2. Same with attackers. You could have more recon aircraft. You could have, instead of just 1 central battle, you could have 2 or 3, which would just alleviate the pressure a little bit from these things. So at top tier, 11.3 to 10.3, or even 11.3 to 10.0, I think these maps are actually quite nice. They work very well. The planes themselves are fast enough to be able to, go there and have a bit of fun. The problem is seeing them at a bit of a lower tier. So at 7.0 to 8.0, which is where I've seen them at the lowest point, I haven't played, around 6.7, 6.3 or so on. What I found when it came to the 7.0 to 8.0 is that everybody just flies around for 25 minutes and doesn't see each other, because not everybody or most people don't have access to radar. They also don't have access to missiles. They also don't have access to they don't have access to great capabilities when it comes to bombing or when it comes to taking stuff out. So what ended up happening in my Oregon was that all we did either side was we just killed the AI, and we didn't actually really fight each other. And when the fights did happen, they were very haphazard, and it was just one-on-ones, and it was whoever got the jump on the other person. And I realized that all I'm doing is I'm flying to the center of the map, killing some AIs, and then I'm going home again, because I'm not seeing anybody, because they're going after my AI, and if I am more efficient at killing their AI than they are on mine, then I get more points and I can get some crazy RP from it. And the RP is really nice. The SL is really nice from the engagement, and you're guaranteed not to die as well, kind of doing this method unless you get jumped. And generally, if you're in a specific or if you're in a plane with a bit of speed, that's not going to happen. But at the same time, it's pretty boring. You're basically just flying around for 25 minutes going after bomber formations or attacker formations. And there's got to be a bit more to the game than that. And it's basically because your vehicles are too slow at that tier. So at the lower tiers, your vehicles are too slow to take advantage of the whole maps, where stuff such as the top tier vehicles are fast enough to be able to look after them or go around all of them. Plus the addition of the radars helps out a lot. And also another thing is that you have to manage your afterburners, which I think is pretty cool as a general idea to look at. But at those lower BRs, you just can't. There's nothing you could do. And I've seen a lot of people talk about, adding external fuel tanks to be able to combat the afterburner usage. Yeah, they could do that. They could chuck some of them in, but that's not going to aid the bracket of like 7.0 to 9.0, where this area is just, the maps are just boring because you're just not quick enough. You don't have afterburners, so you're not burning through your fuel fast enough, and you just kind of sat there just wandering about. So for me, I would limit this specifically for 11.3 to 10.0 or 11.3 to 10.3. I would also add a few more objectives to make sure that the stock grind on maps like this isn't that bad for people. And also, I would change a few little things around the place. As I said, maybe the addition of external fuel tanks could be an interesting factor for maps like this. I think it would be kind of cool to see. And maybe at the same time, just have a few more objectives in. I think I really do think they're fun, and it means that people can play different play styles compared to the standard stuff, which is really cool. And as we go further on into the future, with general vehicles. Their capabilities in terms of speed and acceleration are not really going to change that much, but what's going to change quite a lot is their defensive nature, and also the types of missiles and other ordnance that they're going to have access to. And maps like this, I think, are definitely the way forward to, sort them out. Another thing to mention is I would also increase the time limit just slightly, maybe try 30 or 35 minutes, just because of the fact that it takes a long time to set up and then get back to base and then reset again. So by the time that you've reset, the game is nearly over or is over. So I'd just increase it by just slightly. It doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to go back to like the 55 minutes or whatever it was, but maybe 30. Maybe 35, just to give you the second respawn a bit more of a use. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of these maps in RB, and yeah, let's have a discussion about it, because I think it's kind of interesting to see them now. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Professor X 1718, Orangetail, Sakoshi Tiger, BRFC 15, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe A, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, and then Kyle Kin, Barine, Lafouche, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.